Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and you guys know what time it is. Time to talk about current events in the online fitness community, and Eric Kanevsky has released yet another stack talking about what he did during his off season, and it is absolutely ridiculous. But before we get started, let's go ahead and do an imitation here. Hey everybody, it's Eric Kanevsky here, the most optimal juice head in history. And that's right, my voice sounds like this at the age of 23 because I was running 5 grams of test in my off season. And I look like I'm 45. And never mind that big bruise on my bicep. That's just from the grapeseed oil. Alright guys, I can't even keep that one up. Let me go ahead and put on my +5 hat of Speechcraft and let's talk about this. Okay, Eric basically has said that he stays on high doses for 10 months out of the year, and he talks about, oh yeah man, I come off for 2 months every single year. But he's on a gram or more, or way more, 10 months out of the year. And I think, and I almost said, I'm wondering if I got that right, because he claimed something like, I think he said the words 15-month long cycle this last time, and what he did to get up to 317, he started at, a pretty heavy dose of like test and NPP, and then gradually ramped them up. Every 2 to 4 weeks, he like added something or changed something to the decap, just increasing the dose. And here's the most moronic thing that he said. He talked about, well, you know how you need progressive overload with weights? Well, you need progressive overload with your gear, right? And yeah, that if you don't just keep upping the dose, you can't keep growing. All right, let's come over to the point. That is for people who don't know how to train. All right, if you keep your training the same and you don't know how to program correctly on your training, that is correct. You actually would have to progressively increase your dose. In other words, if you come in and just do the same fluff and pump routine month after month, year after year, without understanding anything about periodization or progressive overload, then yes, you're going to have to continually use more and more and more gear. And it's like I tell people when they say stuff like, well, I just want to look like I can bench 400 without being able to bench 400. Well, you're going to have to use a larger dose of drugs depending upon how low you're going to be under 400 if you want to look like you can bench 400. Whereas if you bench 400 without any gear, you're probably going to look like you can bench 400. But if you can only bench 350, you're going to have to use a certain amount of drugs. And if you only bench 300, you're going to have to use even more drugs to look like that. We kind of come back over to the point with the gear. He actually is equating that with progressive overload, and it's just absolutely ludicrous. This is the hallmark of someone who knows absolutely nothing about training programming. Because to be honest, you should be able to make gains indefinitely on 400 or 500 milligrams. Right? I'm just going to call that like it is. Someone who's using a nice modest amount of stuff like that could make gains forever. They make gains forever if their training programming was on point. I'm not saying they wouldn't make more gains if they upped the dose, but you've got to be realistic about this. They would make continual gains, and they wouldn't lose gains. Because here's what's just ludicrous about his whole stack, and this goes to show you guys of how much water weight he gained. I had people pull this stupid stuff. Well, Jason, you did this cut or you do this. Well, Kanevsky lost 100 pounds on a cut. 50 pounds of it was bloat. All right. When he was 317, if you look at what he was putting into his body, he was holding 50 pounds of bloat weight. And what I mean by that is that if he just dropped down to, say, a maintenance dose of testosterone, and took everything else out of his stack, he would have dropped 50 pounds in 5 to 6 weeks of water weight. Just by itself, without a caloric deficit. No, that's not fat loss, guys. He was holding an extra 50 pounds of water. You know how I know that? Look at his stack. So what did he go to at the peak of it? Now, we're just going to ignore the 2 grams of EQ because people are like, oh, he's taking 7 grams. Guys, EQ doesn't count the same way. 2 grams of EQ is actually milder than you think it is. Like, I'll be honest with you, when you start talking about stuff like EQ, it is so ridiculously low side effect that on a gram of EQ, people don't even get side effects. Sometimes they can't even tell that they added anything to their stack if they add a gram of EQ in. That's how mild it is, so we're not going to count his 2 grams of EQ. Now, granted, I know that's a lot. That's probably enough to start getting some sides, but because it shares all the same androgen receptors as testosterone, and it's just a reduced testosterone, that's what EQ is. It's a reduced testosterone that's half as androgenic as testosterone. and pretty much the same compound outside of that. So 2 grams of that, we're just going to ignore that. Let's go with all the hard stuff. He admitted he was on 5.2 grams of test, a blend of enanthate and propionate. Now remember, propionate is slightly stronger per milligram due to ester weight. But 5.2 grams of test, and I think at this point it doesn't matter that the propionate might have been the equivalent of 200 milligrams more. It doesn't matter at this point. He's at 5 grams. We'll round it down. 5 grams of test. You understand the amount of bloat there? You understand the amount of bloat? Then he claimed 10 to 20 units of GH every day, depending upon what he could handle. Some days it was only 10, some days 15, but even 10. All right, let's talk about 10 units. Let's say we ignore the days where he did 20. 10 units of growth hormone alone is going to put 15 pounds of water weight on you. And again, the price tag, I mean, absolutely ludicrous. It's ludicrous for anyone to take that amount. Even Dorian Yates admitted at, what, 8 units? 8 units. We're getting ridiculous at this point. And then he admits in the video, this is the part everyone's going to freak out about. He was using over 300 units of insulin every day on top of it. So essentially, his stack at his peak to get him to 317 was 5.2 grams of test. Let's keep in mind, what's our replacement dose? 100? 100 milligrams, 125, 150. Now, anyone who's over 150, that is not TRT. Don't let anyone convince you that anything over 150 is TRT. That is not a replacement dose. That is a small cycle, even if prescribed. You're outside the or getting the words tied up. That is super physiological. You're not inside the normal range at that point. When you start going over 150, I don't care what your doctor is prescribing. You're on a small cycle. In fact, I mean, you talk about 200, I mean, is what people will make gains on that. Trust me on that. So instead of that, you think about that as a replacement dose. Call 125 a replacement dose. He's on 5,200. With, this 2 grams of EQ thrown on top of it. It's just boldenone on the cyclinate. Yeah. I mean, that's ludicrous. And then you stack in all this other stuff. An extreme dose of growth hormone, an extreme dose of insulin. Yeah, of course he was 317 pounds. What he really was 250, holding an enormous amount of water weight. Right? That's what actually happened. Enormous amount of water weight. And doing a bunch of pump work, so it's just that works with the insulin. It gives you a nice big pump. You get swollen muscles, but it's not necessarily true hypertrophy. And then, he deflated when he come off all the stuff. And what more do we need to say about this other than this is the most ridiculous crap to date that I've seen Eric come out with. I mean, his contest stack was bad enough. This is pretty bad. And especially all the insulin. Then he throws in his stuff, well, I couldn't even do orals because, if you're a little gymmer, you can do this. And it's like, I'm sorry, Eric, but there are guys who are bigger and stronger than you who use plenty of Drol. Right? You might want to rethink your statements. There are guys who are bigger than you and stronger than you who don't use insulin who use Anadrol in their stack. Just going to throw that in there. So, again, I understand he's got his appetite issues. But, again, this stack is just absolutely over the top. And you know how I say Eric's going to be dead by the time he's 30? I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm not saying that to be a dick. I am saying that is flat out truth. And the truth of the matter is Eric is literally too stupid to know any better. He is literally too stupid based upon what he said there and not really understanding here. And using the amounts of stuff that he's using and actually thinking it's not a big deal. Eric is literally too stupid to understand that he will be dead by 30. And quite frankly, I feel bad for anyone who follows him. I feel bad for anyone who takes his advice. I feel bad for anyone who's getting his coaching because he doesn't know anything about training, nutrition, anything else. He is literally just mega doses of absurd amounts of substances. That's literally the only thing he knows how to do. And you don't need a coach to tell you, hey man, just fill the syringe up 10 times and shoot it. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason to any of this. It's absolutely ludicrous. It's just literally, let's just take these three anabolic substances that have a synergy and just shoot as much of them as I can stand on a daily basis. That's his strategy. Because he doesn't know how to train. He doesn't know nutrition. That's all he is. And then it shows. I mean, he didn't even win. Right? He went through all that and then all these 2 crazy cycles, destroying his health, destroying his body, and he took second place at a regional, guys. A regional type meet. This is not even going pro. This is not him having any chance of getting a pro card. This is like a regional type meet, and he took second place. Didn't even win. This kid will not make it to 30. There is no way he's going to make it to 30. I'm just calling it like it is. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.